Yeah, thank you for coming. I'm Tom. It's good to meet you all. So, yeah, a bit of background on me first. So, I'm an engineer in the space. I work on FEI protocol at the moment as a smart contract engineer. And then before that, I did some ZK stuff working for Aztec protocol, which is, zero knowledge rollup, all about L2s and scaling, that kind of stuff. I'm here today to talk about DAOs, and specifically a type of governance for DAOs called optimistic governance. I'm going to talk about why I think it's quite a cool idea, why it's useful for DAOs, what are some of the limitations. And then I'm a builder in the space. I think there's also a few builders here. I'm going to talk about how you can build this on-chain as a set of smart contracts. So yeah, let's go. So always good to start with like what the takeaway is. So the takeaway from this, if you get nothing else, is what is optimistic governance and why is it useful? So optimistic governance is a way of governing a DAO, so a decentralized autonomous organization. And basically when you have DAOs, you normally kind of create a proposal, the community votes on it, and then it goes through and it gets acted on. Optimistic approval, optimistic governance kind of flips us on its head, and you assume there's already consent for your proposal that you're going to put through on the DAO and through like voting and stuff like that. And then if the community disagrees, they'll dissent. So you assume approval and you ask for dissent. And for very technical proposals, I would argue that it's in an optimal space for decentralization and efficiency. Because you can put things through quite quickly, the community can veto it if they don't like it, so there's still that community consensus layer. So that's the kind of takeaway that we're going to build towards over the next like 15, 20 minutes. So outline. So first of all, for those who aren't too familiar with DAOs, we're going to talk about the different models of governance in DeFi and like how different DeFi projects are typically governed. We're going to build the case for why optimistic governance is very useful for many DAOs, and then we're going to talk through how you build this on chain. So models of governance in DeFi. So there's 4 different buckets that have kind of categorized things into here. Down on the left, you've got direct democracy. So say you're a DeFi project, you've got a DAO, it's governed by some token holders, and those token holders are basically able to vote on proposals. And in direct democracy, the way that governance works is someone creates a proposal, say it's to, I don't know, like change the fee on some parameter, it's to add some new oracle in, and then everybody will basically vote on that and approve that and execute it. The issue with that is it's great. Like you get a huge amount of input, but it is quite slow. It is quite expensive to do. There's another bucket called Delegated Democracy. So you might have heard of protocol politicians potentially. So this is the idea that there's a few individuals in your community, in your DAO community, who have high context. They know exactly what they're talking about, and you trust them to make informed decisions, and you can delegate your voting power to those. There's a third bucket, multi-sig governance. So especially many projects when they're starting out start with a very small group of collaborators. And these people quite often have like a multi-sig that can upgrade a protocol, can ship features quickly before it gets bigger. And then I would argue there's this fourth bucket that is really useful called optimistic governance. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And this basically, yeah, as I was saying before, assumes consent to like do something to your protocol, and then it will ask for dissent. So if the community does not like the proposal you're going to put through, they can veto it, they can cancel it, and that's how it would work. So why is something like optimistic governance useful? So there's always a tension in the decentralized world between maintaining consensus and community kind of agreement, and also shipping fast as a DAO. If every time you go to, this is a typical DAO, so in this snapshot, this particular DAO's got about 10,000 token holders. 10,000 voters and about 300,000 token holders. Building consensus is hard and time-consuming sometimes, and there's always a tension between that and being able to do things quickly. Sometimes DAOs need to ship quickly, sometimes they need to launch new features, maybe they need to radically quickly change some parameters somewhere. And so there's a tension there. And there's something else, like many DAOs, a lot of the proposals that a DAO will pass are not necessarily like that significant. Quite often they're technical, they're operational in nature. It's changing some fee, it's like, yeah, adding some new feature, deploying some new smart contract. It doesn't necessarily need the engagement of an entire community. And so you've got that contrasted with this desire and need to build consensus. So there's a trade-off space. And the way optimistic governance works in this trade-off space is that a community member who's involved in the DAO community will first create a proposal. And then this proposal basically just goes out to the community. And people then have time to kind of think about it, look at the proposal, see if it'll have any adverse effects. And there's a kind of a delay before this proposal like, goes onto the blockchain and does whatever it's going to do. And that delay is super important because it allows people the time to challenge. And if it's challenged, down in the bottom, yes, then the proposal can get cancelled. Well, it will get stopped, it will get cancelled. Sometimes it goes back for more discussion. And if not, it is executed. So that is kind of a very quick overview of different models of governance in DeFi and kind of sets the scene for optimistic governance. So now I'm going to talk about why and how you can build this on-chain and why this is useful to build on-chain. And the example I'm going to use is there's a protocol called FEI, which is where I work. It's an over-collateralized stablecoin. There is a DAO that governs it called the Tribe DAO. And that is a stack of different DeFi protocols. Recently, I built an optimistic governance upgrade for this DAO. Before this upgrade happened, the forms of governance was the typical direct democracy that you saw earlier on. So to pass a proposal, somebody would create one, the community would vote on it, and it would go through. But as I was saying before, there's proposals that do not, in my opinion, need that. They're technical, they're operational in nature, they're low stakes. And then there was also kind of like a very limited emergency kind of guardian that could protect the protocol in small, limited situations. So that is FEI and that is Tribe. Why would you build this on-chain? So there's different ways you could do optimistic governance. We chose to build this on-chain as a set of smart contracts. And that is super, super useful because of this idea of trustware, I call it. So there's a cool company called Orca, and they wrote this cool article about scaling trust in DAOs, trustware versus socialware. And the core idea is that you can have different ways to kind of implement something. You can have socialware, which is kind of like you rely on community consensus, charters, the legal system, contracts to agree on like a set of principles and how you will govern something. That is socialware. There's also another concept of trustware where you basically build these rules into whatever you're creating, and you make it impossible to like not follow these rules. So a great example is a lemonade stand. If you're building a lemonade stand and you're selling lemonade, then you rely on socialware that people are going to pay you, they're not going to underpay you, they maybe give you the appropriate tip. The trustware example of that is a vending machine. Like it's built into the technology that people have to follow the certain rules of the game. So that is why you like to build governance systems as trustware, as smart contracts. Because then the rules are built in, and there's no kind of fuzziness around whether like this gets implemented, this has been vetoed, anything like that. So how do you build this on-chain? So there are 3 components if you want to implement this at your DAO that are very useful. There's 3 components to this system. So the first one is the DAO. So it's important to recognize that even if you have optimistic governance, your DAO is still going to be the ultimate arbiter of everything that happens. It's still the ultimate authority. It can overrule optimistic governance. If token holders don't like something, they can vote and prepare a proposal to do something. So that's the first part. The second part is there's a concept of an optimistic pod. So this is the optimistic part. So the idea of optimistic governance in our upgrade is that you kind of devolve some of the decision-making down to a very small groups of high-context individuals. So say you've got like 5 people in FEI's case that are experts on the FEI protocol. Maybe they know about how you encourage supply, things like that. Well, these groups of people can come together and form what we call a pod, an optimistic pod. And then they can create a proposal to do something. So an example could be maybe some experts in over-collateralized stablecoins realize you need to charge a fee to create a stablecoin. Every time you mint it, you have to charge some minting fee. Maybe they want to adjust that. They could optimistically create a proposal to do that and pass that. So optimistic pods are kind of a core element of this whole system. And then the last thing down at the bottom is a veto. So if this component in number 2, if these pods pass a proposal, if the community does not like that, there needs to be some way for the community to dissent and some way to cancel it. This is how a community dissents, is through a veto. They need to be able to stop any proposal before it hits the chain and activates whatever it's going to do. So 3 components to this system. There's a DAO. Ultimate authority can overrule anything, can change the system if it wants to. an optimistic pod, or several optimistic pods, which will like enact some proposal optimistically. Maybe they're going to change some fees. Maybe they're going to like deploy some new smart contracts. You can have many different pods where you have experts in different parts of the system looking after it. They're almost like working groups almost for different parts of a protocol. And then some on-chain mechanism to be able to allow the community to stop any proposal that they think needs more discussion or they don't agree with. So we're now going to break down those different components, how you might think about implementing them yourself. This is based off what I did at FEI, what we did at FEI. And then I'll show you how it all comes together and show you an example proposal. So pods. So a pod on-chain, on Ethereum, is a smart contract. It's, I think most of you probably know about a multisig or Gnosis safe. So it's a Gnosis safe that has got many different people on it, well, as many people as you want. And there's a membership wrapper around this Gnosis safe where every member gets an NFT. So if you deploy a pod, it's a smart contract, puts a multisig out there, 5 high-context individuals that your community chooses, and they all get like a key card that kind of says, yeah, I'm a member of this, and that's an NFT. And there's a really cool company called Orca. They're actually based in New York, I think, who have built this technology, this kind of building block called a pod. I think pods are really cool. Like, they're going to be more and more popular, I think, going forward, and form a basis of many governance systems. But that is what a pod is. And why the NFT is a good question. Because if you've got a multisig, there's already owners assigned to it. You use an NFT because then you can create authorities. Something like a DAO could revoke an NFT from one of these pod members. And so it's a way that you can kind of create hierarchy between pods. You can have your DAO still be the ultimate authority. It can revoke members from pods beneath it. It can like add new members. And then the other critical piece that you see in the corner is the time lock. So an optimistic pod is this pod plus a time lock. The time lock is important because that's where the proposal sits once they've signed off on it and it's going through. So to bring it to life, think of an example. So again, think of the FEI stablecoin. Maybe some experts want to increase the supply of FEI. You could do that by minting, by lowering the mint fee on FEI. So maybe they create a proposal that lowers the mint fee. And they all sign it in this pod. They all sign it on this multisig. They say, yes, we want to drop the mint fee by 10 basis points. It will then go and sit in the time lock. And it will sit in the time lock for some number of days. And that gives the community time to say, yes, we don't like this, maybe. And so they veto it, and it gets taken out of the time lock and cancelled. But then if the community kind of agrees with it, then it will just sit in the time lock. Once it's done, it will go out and act. So this is an on-chain way through smart contracts to create optimistic governance. You can create proposals that will go and sit in a time lock. If they're not vetoed, if they're not cancelled, they will go out and be enacted. If they are cancelled, it will get taken out of the time lock. So this is a core building part of our system. And then the other thing that you need on-chain, so we've got 3 things, remember. We've got the DAO, which in our case is the tribe DAO. We have pods. And then the third component that you need on-chain is a veto mechanism. There's different ways to implement this. A cool way to do it is to create a new DAO, which is what we did. We called it the tribe Nope DAO. And the DAO basically is another DAO governed again by the same token holders. So in this case study that I'm using, this is the tribe token holders. And basically it can do anything, but in the system, its only role is to veto. So as soon as something goes into a time lock of a pod, somebody could create a proposal on this Nope DAO to veto and cancel that optimistic proposal. And anybody can create this veto. You need 10 million tribe. So yeah, there's basically a very low quorum to hit for this veto to happen. So to put that together, if someone on our pod has a proposal in this time lock, so we've got a proposal in there that's going to drop the mint fee by 10 basis points, whatever. Say the community doesn't like that. Then they would basically nope it through this DAO. You would have enough token holders that will decide, I'm going to vote to nope this, veto it. And then once that's done, it will execute, and this proposal will get pulled out of the time lock, and it will go back to the broader DAO for discussion. So those are the 3 components. So you've got DAO, optimistic pods, and a veto mechanism. So putting it all together, I don't know if you can see this whole schematic, but in the top right-hand corner, you've got the tribe token holders. These govern the DAO, and these govern the Nope DAO. You've got the tribe DAO. And then we deployed one pod to start with. Well, the DAO deployed one pod. It decided to enact a proposal to do this. And this first one was called the Tribe Council pod. This is a high-level pod. It can optimistically pass proposals. It's got a 4-day time lock. So there's 9 members on this Tribe Council pod that were elected from members of the community by the DAO. Once it does something, it goes and sits in a 4-day time lock. If the Nope DAO does not veto it, if the community decides they don't want to dissent and they're happy with this proposal, it then goes to the protocol and it does whatever it's intending to do. There's, just for illustration purposes, down in the bottom, there's some other pods. These are not actually live. These have not been deployed by a DAO, but just for illustration purposes. You can have sub-DAOs, basically. You can create hierarchy where one DAO is like in charge of other, one pod is in charge of pods below it. So in this way, you can begin to kind of scale this out. You can have like individuals who are experts in, we had a product called Turbo, individuals who are experts in Turbo, like administer Turbo and look after that. You can begin to kind of break out into these working groups of highly specialized people who know a lot about a certain area and can optimistically govern. And then if at any point the community disagrees with a proposal, this Nope DAO can veto something and it will go back to the full DAO for discussion. So that sounds cool. Does it actually work in practice? So we deployed this, the Tribe DAO deployed this back in May. And since then, there's been 8 technical proposals that have gone through. They've done all sorts. They've done everything from update oracles, reinforce collateralization ratios. So FEI, the stablecoin, is backed by collateral. It's over-collateralized. This collateral gets placed in different venues. It's updated minting and redeeming parameters, moved a fair amount of money. So it does work in practice. And it's very useful that this is built as smart contracts, because then the governance process is like deployed by the DAO, it's fixed into smart contracts. There's no fuzziness. There's no kind of ambiguity about what can happen. It's built as trustware, not socialware. So to give an example of this, an engineer at FEI built this really cool dashboard which kind of tracks optimistic proposals, because it's very important the community can see what proposals are live and what's going to happen. I'm not sure if you can see this from back there, so I'll read it out. But basically, this proposal was about making sure the collateral that backed FEI was like secure, basically. And so it was exchanging some ETH for DAI, 20k ETH. And basically, you can see in the bottom right, on the 7th of June, the pod members on the Tribe Council signed off on this proposal. It then went into the time lock. It was not vetoed. And then the proposal, after it came out of the time lock, was executed on June the 11th. And then on Etherscan, again, basically this just took 20k ETH out of a deposit, out of Aave, used Balancer. There's something called a liquidity bootstrapping pool and Balancer, which are very cool if you get time to check them out. But basically used one of these pools to swap it for DAI. And then, that's kind of optimistic governance. There's a few things that I think would be quite cool to explore in the future. So this concept of a Nope DAO, there's no reason really why a Nope DAO has to be just specific to one protocol. Orca, I was trying to Orca about the idea that a Nope DAO, you could potentially have this like across different protocols, maybe if protocols wanted to share kind of some optimistic governance system. Could maybe be some kind of public good kind of thing. But that is optimistic governance. Going to give a few acknowledgements. Joey, an engineer, the founder of FEI, designed the first thing, the first kind of schematic. Jamie built this really cool dashboard that I showed you a few slides ago. Orca, we use their building blocks, this pod. Really check out Orca. Like, they're doing some really cool governance primitive stuff. And then Gyroscope is another stablecoin. They did a lot of the early work on optimistic governance, wrote some very cool stuff. Our stuff is an extension of what Gyroscope have come up with. So if you've got any questions, happy to take them. But that is optimistic governance. Thanks.
Hi, I got a question. So when the DAO is voting for something, when the voting is complete, is this like already for the change that's going to be applied to the contract, or it's just like we vote to then to like make time and implement it actually?
So I guess the question is it a fully on-chain?
Is it like for a pull request, or is it just like for an idea?
So this is to change a protocol on-chain. So you've got a set of smart contracts. It's not for a pull request. So
Okay.
you make a pull request, obviously, to create the new smart contract. An engineer would do that.
Yeah.
And then that would get packaged up into a DAO proposal. So the typical form of making a proposal is, pull request code goes on chain, and then it will change the protocol. So it's kind of broader.
Okay, so like whenever it's voted, then or like doesn't have a nope, then it's automatically applied to the contract.
Yes, exactly. So you've already written the code. All of the code is already to go.
Okay.
And then it gets submitted to the pod as a transaction. So I don't know who's used Gnosis safes, but on a Gnosis safe you can queue transactions. You can put like call data on there, and it will go and do something. So you queue a transaction, and then it's that transaction that gets maybe noped or not noped, and that sits in the time lock and then goes out.
Okay,
afterwards.
so the nope thing, I'm gonna like challenge you a bit. So,
Yep.
like if it's, for example, like if it's locked and like on the last hour, somebody makes a nope, and it doesn't have enough time to collect the like quorum, like what happens? Like it's applied automatically or what?
So anybody can create a nope at any time.
Yeah.
If there's if somebody votes for a nope but it doesn't hit quorum, then the nope is not executed. There's a very low quorum of how many token holders need to vote for a nope for it to execute and stop. But if that quorum's not met, then the nope doesn't happen.
Okay. Got it. And like how much is small quorum? Like do you have like some? It's
How
like
much is the
1%?
quorum?
Yeah.
So it's 10 million tribe, I guess context of tribe. So like to create for a normal DAO proposal to pass, you need 25 million tribe votes for it.
Okay.
So it's about like 40% of, less, It's about like just under half of what you would normally need to
So there
pass a
would be like
proposal.
no way that there are some like trolls that are trying to like nope everything all the time.
Yeah, exactly. They would have, unless they bought unless they got access to a lot of tribe,
Okay.
The threshold is sufficient that you can't spam the system and just stop proposals. It's still a threshold, as in the quorum, but it's not, that quorum is like well placed basically to trade off against spam and real, nopes.
All right, a question up here.
Yeah, how do you deter proposal spam? If I can I spam proposals, create 100 that people then have to deal with by noping them? Or do you charge for proposals?
I guess the question is, what do you do about the threat of spamming proposals to derail the governance?
Yep, sure. Great question. So this tribe council pod that you see here was the DAO decided to deploy it, and the DAO upgraded the system to add this. So there's currently only one pod in this system, and that was created by the DAO. Pods to be created, they need to be given access roles to the protocol. So nobody can just create a pod and it can suddenly just do stuff. It goes through like governance. It's got to be granted certain access roles, certain powers. So the answer to my question is that this pod creation process is like a governance process. So you're only ever going to probably end up with pods that are very engaged community members, passing thought through proposals. Things can get noped if they're not sufficient because the community decides to vote against it. So the proposals that actually end up on chain, I think, have got a lot of thought in them because these pods are created through the whole governance process. So you can end up with very engaged people on it. As you scale out, obviously, that becomes like more challenging. So say you've got like 100 pods, 200 pods, then you're like an entire organization, and it's a huge thing. So there's definitely challenges, but I think as you get to scale with this kind of system, once you've got 100 pods, like you need all sorts of extra stuff, I think, to kind of monitor it and look after it. But for most protocols this size, I think a few pods, 4 or 5 pods, something like that, is very manageable. We've got a very cool dashboard that kind of shows what's going on. But yeah, there will be scalability challenges that you have to engineer for as you get bigger.
So proposals can only be created by pods?
Correct, yeah. So a pod, so again, a Gnosis safe. The way it actually interacts with our protocol is the DAO grants it access roles over the protocol. So to change a mint fee on FEI, you need the minter role, for example. To be able to, I don't know, move funds somewhere, you need a particular role. So a pod can only do that if it's been granted that role by a higher level pod or the DAO.
We'll wrap it up unless got one more question.
Okay,
Yep.
one more.
Yeah, so right now we're gonna move to like proof of stake on Ethereum, for example, and we have like a lot of miners, and those people don't want to move to proof of stake. They want to have proof of work. Like,
Yep.
how do you handle those? Like, because there's gonna be always a quorum for no DAO for those people. Do you get the question?
How do we handle?
So, for example, like there was they want to move the Ethereum, for example, to proof of stake. There's
Yep.
a voting, and there's an DAO which will always get the quorum because there are so many miners who don't want to move to proof of stake because it's unsustainable for them.
Okay, yeah. So you're saying if we took this system, optimistic governance, and it was kind of implemented more broadly on Ethereum, and it could veto some decision like that, like moving to proof of stake. That's a good point. So like this system should only really work and be useful in terms of like technical operational proposals. For like big proposals that are strategic, that change the value basis of a protocol, that fundamentally shift values in some way or fundamentally shift technology, that should still go through a full DAO vote, because those kind of decisions are potentially controversial, and like they're not just kind of like low cost kind of things. Like, so in the case of that, a big consensus shift, that should be like a broader community discussion. You should not really be using optimistic governance. This stuff is only kind of useful for like technical operational stuff, which realistically is probably fine. So yeah.
Okay, final question.
So the question is that why would you like to leave operational decision making in the hands of DAO instead of allowing specific team members or managers to run the business on a non-strategic matters? That's the question. Why would you like to leave operational aspect of the business to a DAO decision making instead of leaving it to the operational teams?
Yep. Okay. So this kind of system is only useful for like on-chain protocols. So a protocol that is made up of a series of smart contracts on Ethereum where they are governed by a DAO. So in the traditional world, if you've got a business that is like selling services, like a Web 2 kind of business, then you would not use this situation. You would not use this. You would not have a kind of a DAO that kind of governs what you're doing. That would be in the hands of like a very traditional org structure with managers and things like that, exactly as you're saying. This system is designed for on-chain protocols. So think about things like, Tride, like Uniswap, like Maker, these kind of like on-chain protocols, which are a series of smart contracts. This is a really cool, lightweight way of pushing and passing technical proposals. So yeah, for a traditional kind of business, you wouldn't delegate it to a DAO. You'd have your traditional like kind of org structure.
All right, thanks, guys. So as you know, Tom Waite.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Fantastic.